Welcome to the WVSSAC football training module. This module is for new officials, and these are the must-know basics that new officials must be introduced to before they begin football officiating. My name is Larry McCloy, and I am the WVSSAC State Football Clinician. My contact information for email is refrules90@gmail.com, and my contact telephone number is 304-482-4454. You can contact me at any time by email, by phone, by text, with any questions or concerns that you have, and I will get back to you at my earliest convenience. I want to welcome you and congratulate you on wanting to become a football official. Football officiating is a good way to give back to the game that many of you have played or may currently be playing. Some may have never played but just enjoy the game of football and want to get more involved in the sport. Officiating is very rewarding in areas of community involvement, the relationships you make with schools, coaches, administrators, and the players. Plus, it is a good way to make some extra money doing something that you enjoy. The new football officials training module consists of 4 elements. The first element is the Ref Prep Football 101 module. The second element is this WVSSAC State Clinician presentation that must be viewed. You will also have to meet for 5 hours with your local association leaders, and it will be up to the association leaders on how they want to conduct those 5 hours with you. And then the last element will be the 10 hours of on-field mechanics work with your local association, and this must be done in person on the football field so you can learn the appropriate approved high school football mechanics. One thing as an official that you must familiarize yourself with is the WVSSAC Officials Handbook. This handbook can be found on the WVSSAC website at wvssac.org, and it is located under the Officials tab. This handbook is titled Officials Handbook for that reason. It is a handbook for the officials. So you are responsible to know where this document can be located for any questions that you have regarding rules and regulations when it involves the WVSSAC. As an official, you must do your best to master the rules of the game and the mechanics necessary to enforce those rules. And as we go through the training, and you go through the training with your local association and your local board meetings throughout the season, the rules and the mechanics are things that are discussed at that time, so we can all get better on knowing the rules, knowing the mechanics, and applying them properly. I have always stated that the difference between a football official and a fan official is the football official knows the rules. There are so many rules differences between high school football, the NCAA football for college, and the NFL. There are 3 different levels of play, and they play by 3 different sets of rules. So we must be able to know what rules apply to the game that we are officiating and apply them correctly. And most times, fans and even coaches do not know the rules as well as the football official does. Coaches rely on the officials to know the rules and apply them correctly. Officials shall work with each of their state associations in a constructive and cooperative manner. Everyone at our office is here to help you. Any questions or concerns you have, please feel free to reach out to us. That's what we are here for, to answer your questions and to help you, as well as the local association leaders that you will be a member of. Officials must prepare themselves both physically and mentally and shall dress neatly. Football officials are always a football official in my eyes, meaning if you are at Walmart on a Tuesday evening, you are looked at by many as a football official because that's how they know you. So you must conduct yourself appropriately even in those settings. Even though you may not be in uniform, just always remember that as an official, you are looked at differently. And that is not a bad thing, that is a good thing. So represent the striped shirt well when you're in it and also when you're not wearing it. The game of football cannot be played without officials. If there are no officials there, there is no contest. So with that being said, officials must be punctual and professional in the fulfillment of their contractual obligations. So we must be on time. Most officials will arrive for a lower level contest at least, at minimum, a half hour prior to the game. I would suggest that you get there 45 minutes prior to kickoff for a lower level contest. For varsity contests played on a Friday night, the working crew is on site at minimum an hour and a half prior to kickoff. Some crews arrive 2 hours before kickoff. They want to make sure that they get on site, that they get their equipment put on correctly, and they're ready to do the game both physically and mentally when that kickoff time is scheduled. We must honor the contracts that we make. Now those contracts could be through the computer. They might even be a verbal commitment. But when you make a commitment to a game, you are expected to work that game. Football games are hardly ever canceled. And when I say hardly ever, we normally do not cancel a game due to weather. A game can be delayed due to excessive heat. They can be suspended due to lightning. But most games in football, other than those two weather situations, are usually played as scheduled. So just remember that. And when you accept a game, you are expected to be at that game site. Now we know things happen outside of football. We get that. So if that happens, just work with your assigner and work with your local association to get a replacement for you. But we really would like to keep substitutions and replacements at a bare minimum. So just honor the contract that you verbally, writtenly, or through a computer accept. We are going to discuss the football officials' dress code. Officials may only wear shirts adopted by the WVSSAC Officials Advisory Committee. The logo sublimation must be worn on the left breast of the shirt. If jackets are worn, the logo sublimation must also be located on the left breast of the jacket. Most officials do not wear jackets in football. They have special shirts designed for really cold weather that can be purchased, but normally a short sleeve shirt or a long sleeve shirt with items worn under the long sleeve shirt is adequate to keep you warm for cold weather contest. Officials are not permitted to wear jewelry. However, officials may wear a wedding band or a ring, but it's not recommended. We do not allow players to wear jewelry, so as officials we must set an example for the players by us not wearing jewelry ourselves. The varsity level uniform in football consists of black and white striped shirt with a 2 1/4 inch stripe, and they can be short or long sleeve. black pants with a 1¼ inch white stripe down the side of each leg, and black crew socks, a black belt, and predominantly black football shoes with black laces. There can be some white accents on the football shoe. Officials will wear a black hat with white piping. The referee will wear a white hat. Each official shall use a gold penalty marker, and they will use a blue beanbag, and we will talk about the reason for the flag and the beanbag later in the module. Jackets are not mandatory, but if they are worn, they shall be black and white striped like the officiating shirt. All officials in a given contest must be in uniform in their dress. What this means is all officials must wear the same uniform. So if you're working on a crew and 2 of the guys have short sleeve shirts on, then you must wear a short sleeve shirt as well. No sunglasses are permitted to be worn. Prescription glasses with transitional lenses are permissible, but regular straight sunglasses are not to be worn by officials. There is a reason for this. Perception has a lot to do with officiating. And let's face it, most spectators, most coaches, the perception for officials is they can't see, or to use the term, they are blind. So by wearing dark sunglasses or wearing any type of sunglasses gives that perception that you're not able to see. Junior varsity contest, 9th grade contest, or middle school games, officials are allowed to wear either the black pants or they can wear plain black shorts. Once again, all officials in a given contest must wear the same uniform. So if you are on a 4-person crew and 3 of the crew members have shorts on, then you must wear shorts. You would not be able to wear pants. This uniform situation can be addressed just by having good communication with your crewmates on who you're going to be working with. So look at that information earlier in the week prior to your game and discuss what uniform you're going to wear for that given contest. As an official, you want to take pride in your appearance. This is the proper way to dress for a varsity game. As long as you look like an official and know the proper mechanics, coaches and spectators will not know that you're a first-year official. By looking at this picture, there's a variety of experiences in this picture, ranging anywhere from 4 years experience up to 30 years experience. Can you pick out which one has 30 years? They all look the part, and that is very important when it comes to officiating. So you can look the part just by dressing correctly, by having a nice clean uniform and having everything tucked in and just looking like an official. Once again, this is proper dress for any varsity game, and this would be a proper dress and would be acceptable dress for a middle school game. And many officials, myself included, take the approach that the middle school game to that student athlete is just as important to that player as the Friday night contest is to the varsity senior for his game. All games are important to these players, and we as officials must treat every game the same. Here is another example of a properly dressed official. This official is the referee, as he is wearing the white hat. Notice his sublimated logo on his left breast of his shirt. Notice the blue beanbags, and his gold penalty marker is out of sight, which is probably in his back pocket at this time. this looks like an official, and this looks like someone who is in charge of a contest that will be respected by both the players, coaches, and the fans. What expectations do we have for you as a new official? What do we expect that you remember after taking this training? I have taught the training course in West Virginia for 24 years. And I always told my training class that I am only going to teach you about 10% of the high school football rule book. The training is very extensive, and we realize that. All these modules do is give you an introductory to football officiating when it comes to the terminology that we use, to some of the philosophies that we implement. It is hard and almost impossible to teach one to officiate the game of football over a 30-hour training curriculum. To train you properly initially, it would probably take 6 months. But we all know that you all do not have the time commitment to give that to us for a thorough training to be an official. But what I can tell you is this: by taking these modules, listening to them, trying to digest as much as you can, you will be able to officiate a contest by late August with veteran officials, and will be able to call the game without any issues. We have all been through it, and I always told my students this: if you feel that you have no idea what you are doing, I'm going to be honest, you are exactly where we want you. You are feeling exactly the way you should feel. Now, from a teacher standpoint, I know that sounds crazy, but that's the reality of this. This is just an introduction. So don't be overwhelmed by the Ref Prep module, because it can be and will be very overwhelming to you, more than likely. Just watch the modules, take the quizzes, listen to it, and maybe when you're sitting a local board meeting in October or November, and your local association leader brings up a term such as free blocking zone or the definition of a block in the back, you will be able to say, you know what, I remember that was in that module. Now you might say, hey, I can't tell you what it said because the information is overwhelming. But at least you will know maybe in the rule book where to go look up a definition, where to look up a play situation that may happen in your game. We don't expect you to remember all of this. This training is only an introduction. And don't worry, we will get you through this. Your local association leaders will get you through this. The veterans that you work middle school, JV, freshman, and even varsity contest earlier in your career, they will get you through this. We are all out there together as a team. It is not year 1 official, year 6 official, year 10 official. We are out there as one unit, and we all have each other's backs. So just don't expect too much of yourself early on. Just trust the process. I ask that you do this for me, and you will find that you can become a good quality football official. Now, I'm going to be honest, it's not going to happen overnight. It may take you 5 to 7 years to where you start to even feel comfortable on a football field, thinking, you know, I can handle probably about every situation that would be thrown at me. And I hope in years 5 through 7, you get to that point. We have some officials that are there, but I'll be honest, we have some officials that aren't there and may never get there. So everybody learns at different speeds. So what I can say about officiating is what you put into it, you will get out of it. So just trust the process, don't get frustrated, and lean on your local association leaders, lean on me as your state clinician to answer any questions, concerns, frustrations that you may have. One question that goes through new officials' minds is, what levels can I work? First year officials will be able to officiate middle school games, freshman and junior varsity contests. They will also be able to officiate youth games. Now, youth games are not covered by the WVSSAC. The WVSSAC is only over middle school on up. Beginning your second year, you do become varsity eligible and will have varsity consideration through your local board. Now, in August of this year, after you complete the training, you will be able to officiate varsity scrimmages, and many of you will do that. But the first year, it will be JV ball and below. Beginning in year 2, you will be varsity eligible. Another question that is always on the mind of new officials is, how much do we get paid per game? We do get paid for doing what we do. Now, on average, a middle school contest will pay $40 to $55 per official, depending upon the geographic location on where you are within the state. And that agreement is worked out with your local board and the schools that are involved. For junior varsity and freshman contests, the average rate is $50 to $60 per game. And once you get to the varsity level, the average rate is anywhere between $80 to $100 per game. Now, even though the WVSSAC is not every youth contest will pay anywhere between $50 to $70 per game. The way games are usually played is most of your youth games are played on Saturday and Sunday. Most junior varsity contests are played on Monday evenings, with some maybe being played on a Saturday morning. Usually Thursday is the night for your middle school contest, and then your varsity contests are usually played on Friday and or Saturday evenings. Another question that is always on the mind of new officials is, how do I get games? The nice thing about football officiating is you control your own schedule. And what I mean by that is, everyone has different lifestyles outside of football. So you control how much you want to work by working with your local association and the assigners within your association. We have some officials that might be able to work 4 or 5 days a week, and there might be other officials due to their work schedule or family commitments at home where they might only be able to work on a Thursday night or maybe a Monday evening. So that is totally up to you on how many games you get to work in a season. I would recommend that you work as many games as possible. The more you work, the better you're going to get. Once again, what you put into officiating, you will get out of it. If you work a youth game on a weekend, most youth games are either 2 or 3 games. So, it's nothing for a new official maybe in his first year to work 50, 60, 70 football games. We have some officials that only work 10 games a year due to their physical abilities and their time commitments, and that's okay too. But we are short on officials, as you know, and we need to get these games covered for these student athletes because all of the games are important, be it middle school, JV, freshman, or varsity. How do you get equipment to officiate football? I would recommend buying your equipment from an authorized dealer who deals in sports officiating equipment. There are many companies out there that deal in apparel and equipment. Now, for the SSAC logo shirt, you must buy that shirt through the official call, as they are the only authorized dealer who is able to sell that logo merchandise. Other companies that you can buy equipment from, such as accessories and pants and hats and shoes and things like that. Some of the companies that I would recommend you look at, obviously the official call, would be able to set you up with everything you need through starter packages, as well as companies such as Honig's and Purchase Official. Now, these are just to name a few. Like I said, there are many out there. So I would recommend just searching and finding out what works best for you. The NFHS football rulebook is divided into 10 sections. We're only going to hit on a few of those sections in this module. But once again, we are just introducing you to some terminology and some things that we think you must know as you come out of this training module. So in Rule 1, it deals with the player equipment, game equipment, field markings. So make note that the team box and the coach's box, when properly marked, is from the 25-yard line to the 25-yard line. 9-yard markings on the field are used when it comes to determine substitutions and legality of formations during a play, and that will come later in your local association training. But make note that when a field is properly marked, and if there's numbers on the playing surface, make note as a point of reference that it is 9 yards from the top of that numeral to the sideline. That is important to know later on when we talk about substitutions. The game ball, for a game ball to be legal at all levels, it must be inflated to 12.5 to 13.5 pounds. Now there's a couple ways to measure this inflation, and one of the ways is by putting a gauge inside the football to give you the pressure. Now I caution you that if you do this, be very careful and not bust the bladder of the football, as footballs are very expensive and usually run average over $100. So we don't want to put a school in a bad situation by deflating their football. So most officials will just squeeze the football with their hands. The referee is the official responsible for approving the game balls. And so if you can squeeze the football and if you can make much of an indentation in it, then more than likely it is not inflated properly. So make sure that it does get inflated properly prior to play. We are going to discuss player equipment, what is mandatory that players wear. Some equipment can be worn if the umpire approves it. Now, remember this. The umpire is responsible for the legality of player equipment. That is the umpire's responsibility prior to the game, is making sure the equipment that players are using is legal. Any questions regarding the legality of a player's equipment will be turned to the umpire to answer this question. Prior to the game, officials will verify with the head coach that his players are legally equipped and that they will remain that way throughout the contest. And then we will also highlight in this section illegal equipment. equipment that players are not allowed to wear during the game. Here is a marking of a properly marked football field. Make note, as talked about in the previous slide, the coaches and team box is from 25-yard line to 25-yard line. Notice that the numbers on the field, from the top of the number to the sideline, is 9 yards. This diagram is in your rule book, so this is something good to refer to anytime you're taking a quiz or a test and it asks you about the field dimensions. To begin the mandatory equipment that players must wear, we are going to start out with a helmet and a face mask. The helmet must meet the NOCSI standard and have the NOCSI stamp on the outside of the helmet, and it must have a chin strap, and the chin strap must have at least 4 attachment points. For the helmet to be worn properly, all 4 attachment points must be secure. If one of them is not secure, then that is illegal equipment, and that player needs to be removed for at least 1 down so correction can be made. Players must wear jerseys, and the jerseys must be unaltered. In football, the visiting team will wear a white jersey, the home team will wear a dark jersey. This section of the rule addresses the home team jersey, and in 2021 it went into effect that the jersey of the home team shall be a dark collar that clearly contrasts to white. And it gives you examples here on if white appears in the body of the jersey, where it can appear. But just as a reminder, the visiting team wears white and the home team will wear a dark jersey that contrasts to white. The numbers on the jersey shall be clearly visible and legible, and the legal numbers are 0 through 99. 0 was added for the upcoming 2022 season. So the number 0 is legal. Any number preceding 0 is illegal. So 0, 1 would be illegal, or 0, 0 would be an illegal number. But if the player was just wearing the number 0, that would be legal in 2022. When it comes to numbers, just something to make note of when it comes to pass eligibility. The numbers 50 through 79 are ineligible players when it comes to pass receiving. The eligible numbers for catching a legal forward pass are 0 through 49 and 80 through 99. The pads to be worn that are mandatory equipment are hip pads and tailbone protectors. Hip pads and tailbone protectors are usually built into the pants, but these 2 pads are required that a player have on his person. Knee pads are required equipment, and when worn properly, knee pads are to be worn over the knee and under the pants. Shoulder pads are required equipment, and they must be fully covered by a jersey. We do not want any hard surface exposed, as sometimes that plastic, the edges can get very sharp, and it can be very dangerous to a player or an opponent of having that individual cut by that sharp plastic edge. A player must wear thigh guards, and all the pads have to be unaltered. They have to be worn from the manufacturer's original design. A tooth and mouth protector is required equipment. It can be any collar. We just require that they have one. It does not have to be attached to the helmet. They just have to have a tooth mouth protector in their mouth prior to the snap taking place. And pants, the pants must fully cover the knee. This is the problem that we run into now in high school athletics, is manufacturers are making pants that ride up on a player's leg, exposing his knee. For that player to participate in a play legally, those pants must cover his knee. If they do not cover the knee, you need to take an official's timeout and send that player out until correction is made. He wants to play in that contest. He will get this fixed, because if he does not get it fixed, he will not be able to participate. In high school football, safety is our number one concern. We want to make sure all the players are safe, and by them being equipped properly is one way to enable safety in high school football. Other mandatory equipment includes shoes. Players must wear shoes. Now, I'm not sure how old some of you are, but I can remember there have been NFL kickers that used to kick barefoot. So if this would ever present itself to you, that is illegal, as a player must wear shoes and able to participate. This section talks about the cleats on the shoes. The most important thing that you need to kind of take out of this section is cleats are not allowed to be longer than a ½ inch in length, and they are allowed to have steel on the tips of them if a coach would ask you. But just remember, they must wear shoes, and the cleats cannot be any longer than a ½ inch in length. The following equipment can be worn if the umpire approves it. Remember, the umpire is the expert when it comes to the legality of player equipment. Gloves can be worn by a player as long as they meet the NOCSI or the SFIA stamp specifications at time of manufacture. To be a glove is an apparatus that covers each finger on the hand. So to be an athletic glove, it must meet the specifications and have the approved label, either on the outside or on the inside of the glove. When we talk about illegal equipment on players, remember all pads must be fully covered by a jersey. So the rib pads and back protectors, like the kick plate that some running backs wear, those can only be worn if they are fully covered by a jersey and the umpire approves them. Other illegal equipment, if you have a ball-collared helmet, a ball-collared jersey, patches, or exterior arm pads, undershirts or gloves. Electronic communication devices cannot be used to communicate with a player except during a conference that occurs outside the 9-yard marks, meaning from the top of the number to the sideline. Only there can an electronic device be used for communication with a player. Eye shade is illegal. For eye shade to be worn properly, it has to be a single stroke, and it has to be underneath the eye. The eye shade cannot have any logos, any words, any symbols in it. A couple slides here, we will have an example of illegal eye shade. Some people call it eye black. Eye black is a brand. Eye shade is the actual marking. Eye shade does not have to be black to be legal. Some players in the month of October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month will wear pink eye shade. Once again, if that is worn strictly directly under the eye, one single stroke with no symbols or lettering within it, then that is legal. Otherwise, eye shade cannot be worn. Any type of eye shield that is tinted is illegal. For an eye shield to be worn properly, it has to be 100% clear. It cannot have any tint to it. It does not matter if there is a doctor's note presented to you prior to the game from the player's optometrist or the player's doctor. If that eye shield has tint, it must be removed before participation. Now, if you have a player who is light sensitive, the player can wear an eye shield with 100% clear transmission. However, that player could wear tinted sunglasses. The reason the eye shield must be clear is so the officials and medical personnel can look at the player's eyes to possibly see visible symptom signs of a concussion. Now, the reason the sunglasses can be worn is the sunglasses can be removed from the player's face easily by reaching underneath the helmet and removing the sunglasses. That is a lot easier than having a player injured and trying to remove a tinted eye shield that's attached to his helmet. Jewelry is not allowed to be worn by players. However, they can wear a religious medal or a medic alert medal, but that medal has to be taped to their body. Any type of chain, earrings, anything of that nature is illegal equipment and must be removed before participation. For a play card to be worn legally, it must be worn on the wrist or arm. It is not allowed to be worn on the belt of the player. It's not allowed to be worn on the bicep of the player. It must be worn on the wrist, forearm part of the player to be worn properly. Prior to the start of the game, the head coach is responsible for verifying to the referee and another game official that all of his players are legally equipped in compliance with the rules and will use no illegal equipment. Any questions regarding legality of a player's equipment or the presence of required equipment shall be resolved by the umpire. Remember, we always want to have a witness when we're verifying with the head coach that all of his players are legally equipped. Make him say yes or no. Don't make him say, I think so. We need a definite yes or no answer from the head coach. When any required player equipment is missing or worn improperly, an official's timeout shall be taken, and the missing or improperly worn equipment shall be fixed, and that player has to be removed for a down so correction can be made before he is allowed to participate in the contest. Here is an example of illegal eye shade being worn. Remember, it must be a single stroke under the eye. It cannot be down the cheek like it is in the player on the left. In the player on the right, notice that it has lettering within the eye shade, plus it goes across the bridge of his nose, one continuous strip. This is illegal, and the player will not be allowed to participate until this is removed. Remember, knee pads are mandatory equipment, but to be worn properly, they must be worn under the pants and over the knee. This is an example of a player not legally equipped due to the knee pad not covering the knee. This player needs to be removed until correction is made. We as officials, we want the players to play as they want to play. So the time for officials to look at equipment and look over the way a player is dressed is prior to the contest. Most officials will take the field a half hour prior to the scheduled kickoff to do other duties that you will learn about those duties when you do your field work. But this is a time to scan the equipment when we're walking the field, when the players are warming up, and have them make any corrections and remove anything that needs to be taken care of prior to the game. We don't want to make an issue of this as an official, but we can do it by saying, hey, number 54, if you want to play, you need to take that wristband off, or you need to wipe that eye shade off your face that goes down your cheek. You have to make it a single stroke under your eye. Now, another piece of illegal equipment that we did not touch on is sweatbands. Sweatbands can be worn. However, they have to be worn on the wrist. They are not allowed to be worn up on the bicep. They are not allowed to be worn on the calf of the player. Those are adornments, and adornments are not allowed to be worn. So if a player wants to wear a sweatband, it has to be worn on his wrist. So if you see a player and he has a sweatband up around his bicep, either have him pull it down to his wrist or have him take it off. He wants to play. He does not want to go out of that game. So he's going to do what you request of him to do. Officiating to me is all about little things, but all the little things add up to big things. So we must do our very best to pay attention to detail. That is what we are paid to do. And coaches have a lot on their plate. If you have a team that has 65 players, that head coach is responsible to make sure all 65 players are dressed properly. And that's a big responsibility on that head coach. So even though they try to help us out by telling the players what they need to be wearing legally, they may not be able to keep up with all of them. So it's our job to scan them during every dead ball situation to make sure that they are equipped in a safe and proper manner. Rule 2 of the NFHS football rules book has to do with definitions. This is the most important rule that you have in your book. The definitions in Rule 2 can be found throughout the other rules throughout the book, but we must know the definitions. If you know the definitions verbatim, it will help you so much to learn, understand, apply the rules in game situations. I look at definitions as how of learning to study for a spelling test when I was back in school. I would memorize how to spell the word. I try to memorize the definitions so I can recite it back to a coach or to a player almost verbatim, if not verbatim. Good officials know the definitions. Knowing the definitions is what separates a football official from a fan official. As you learn the definitions in the book, take note of key words within the definition itself. Examples, at or below. For example, when it comes to blocking and blocking below the waist. At or below, above, those things make all the difference in the world on if that block is legal or illegal. So we must know the definition to be able to call a foul. As a new official, as you're learning Rule 2, here are some definitions that you will want to focus on. You will want to focus on the definitions of the player designations. For example, what is an offensive lineman? What's a defensive lineman? What makes a player a passer? What makes a player a kicker? What makes a player a holder? All of these players have specific definitions and requirements that they must meet to establish themselves as that type of player. And we must know these. Now, many of us watch NFL football on Sunday and we think we know who a defensive lineman is and an offensive lineman. However, we have definitions and criteria that those players must meet to establish themselves in that role. And that's really big when it talks about who's able to block below the waist legally during a play. So we must know what those requirements are, and that player must meet and able to be that type of player designation. Other examples, the definitions you will want to look at are line of scrimmage, definitions of blocking, such as blocking below the waist, what is a block in the back, what is clipping, an introduction to what is the free blocking zone, where blocking below the waist and blocking in the back is permitted legally. What types of conferences do we have in football officiating with the coaches and the players? What's the definition of encroachment? What's the definition of the neutral zone? What's the definition of forward progress? We have definitions for the types of fouls that we have. We have dead ball fouls, live ball fouls, double fouls, multiple fouls, unsportsmanlike fouls. All of these fouls and categories have specific definitions that apply to that situation. And we as an official must know those. If you know them, it's going to make officiating for you so much easier. So you will be able to recognize fouls and know when to call a violation or when it is not a violation and that situation becomes legal because you knew what the definition was. Some other definitions you will want to focus on. What's the difference between a fumble and a muff? There's a big difference between these two terms, especially when it comes to the kicking game. What are types of plays for penalty enforcement? What types of plays do we have as officials that involves penalty enforcement? We basically have just two types. We have loose ball plays and we have running plays. We must know what makes up each type of these plays, and we also must know what the basic spot is for penalty enforcement for each type of these plays. And we will discuss this a little further here in the module in a bit, but these are just some terms that you will want to become familiar with. And once again, we don't expect you to remember all this, but just know if you hear an official say that was a loose ball play, you will know that, hey, if I go back to definitions in Rule 2, I can look up what that means. So that's all we want you to be able to take away from this. The definition of blocking in Article 7. Blocking below the waist is making initial contact. Initial is a big word there that you would want to highlight. Below the waist, below is another one, from the front or side. That is the definition of a block below the waist. I would like for you eventually in your career to be able to recite that definition back to me verbatim. Blocking below the waist is making initial contact below the waist from the front or side against an opponent other than a runner. That is so important that you know that. Because if a coach would say, hey, that was a block below the waist, you could say, Coach, no it wasn't because it did not meet this part of the definition. That is what we are paid to know. Initial is a key word there. As officials, we must see the entire block take place. We must see the initial action. And sometimes that is hard. When you have 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 officials watching 22 athletes fly around on the football field, officials miss things all the time. Officials will never officiate a perfect game, just as coaches will never coach one and players will never play one. We strive to reach that goal, and that's what makes football officiating so much fun, is we know we will never achieve it, even though we do our very best to try to reach that point. The definition of a chop block has changed for the 2022 season, so you will learn that this coming fall. A blindside block in Article 10 is a block against an opponent other than the runner who does not see the blocker approaching. That is very important. To be a blindside block, which is illegal, it has to be a block against an opponent other than the runner who does not see the blocker approaching. If the player is not able to defend himself because he does not see his opponent coming to block him, and it's a forceful block, that is illegal. Now the fans are going to think it's a great block and a great hit and a big hit. It's going to make the highlight reel. But in high school football, that is an illegal block. So we must know these definitions. In the previous slides and the definitions, you notice that we said other than the runner on a couple occurrences. The reason that is a runner is treated differently than any other player. About any act can be done to a runner other than commit a personal foul against him, such as a face mask, or by using illegal helmet contact against the runner, or by tripping the runner. Those acts are illegal on any player. So just keep that in mind as you're going through these definitions. The definition of clipping is a block against an opponent when the initial contact, there's the word initial again, is from behind, at or below the waist, and not against a player who is a runner or pretending to be a runner. We do not have many clips that occur anymore in high school football. We do have a lot of blocks in the back that occur, and we're going to go over that definition next. But make note of the difference between the definition of a block in the back and a definition of clipping. The definition of blocking in the back is a block against an opponent when the initial contact is in the opponent's back, inside the shoulders and below the helmet and above the waist, and not against a player who is a runner or pretending to be a runner. This is the block that we get called a lot. This happens a lot on running plays. It also happens a lot on free kicks and scrimmage kick returns. So, for it to be a block in the back, it has to be initial contact in the opponent's back. And when we say the opponent's back, we're talking inside the shoulders, meaning inside the armpits. Having some point of initial contact on the number on the back of the jersey is a good guideline to use. Remember, we must see the initial contact. That is what the rule says. Coaches will say that is not a block in the back because the player's head was in front. And my question to the coach is, there's nothing in the definition of a block in the back that talks about head position. Head position has absolutely nothing to do with the block in the back definition. We're looking at initial contact in the opponent's back, which is between the armpits, below the shoulders, below the helmet, and above the waist. So learn this definition verbatim, and you will use this definition for the rest of your officiating career. Another definition that you will want to become familiar with is that of a catch. A catch is the act of establishing player possession of a live ball which is in flight and first contacting the ground in bounds while maintaining possession of the ball, or having the forward progress of the player in possession stopped while the opponent is carrying the player who is in possession and in bounds. To be a catch in high school football, the player must contact the ground in bounds with at least 1 foot or any part of his body. We do not need to have 2 feet down in high school football to be a catch. In high school, as a general rule, you must get 1 foot down in bounds while having possession of the football. The definition of a simultaneous catch or recovery is a catch or recovery in which there is joint possession of the live ball by opposing players who are in bounds. And the key to that definition is if both players have possession of the football simultaneously, to be a simultaneous catch or recovery, both players must be in bounds when that happens. So just make note of that. This section deals with the type of conferences that are allowed to take place during a coach official conference and during a charged team timeout. First off, if a coach and a referee want to have a conference, the referee must do it with the coach at the sideline in front of his team box in the field of play. We already know that the team box stretches from the 25-yard line to the 25-yard line. Coaches are allowed to speak to the referee for situations that may involve a misapplication or a misinterpretation of a rule. They are not allowed to question and have a conference for judgment calls. Authorized team conferences consist of 2 types. An outside 9-yard mark conference. This conference takes place from the top of the number to the sideline in front of the team box. And with this conference, you can have as many coaches as you would like and as many players as you would like. The other type of conference that is allowed is between the 9-yard mark conferences. This is where one coach can go on the field to confer with no more than 11 players at his team's huddle between the hash marks. So only 2 types of conferences. The most common one is the one in front of the sideline from the top of the number to the sideline with as many coaches and as many players as they want during that timeout interval. But if a coach does want to go out to speak to his 11 players between the hash marks, he is allowed to do so as long as it's only one coach going out there. The definition of a fumble. A fumble is any loss of player possession other than by handing, passing, or legal kick. To fumble the football, the player must have possession of the football. This is a big difference between a fumble and a muff that we will discuss here shortly. But for a player to fumble the ball, he must have had possession of it. This is important because any player, offense or defense, is able to advance a fumble. A muff is the touching of a loose ball by a player in an unsuccessful attempt to secure possession. So when you muff the football, the ball touches you, but you never actually had possession of it. You see this a lot on scrimmage kick plays, such as punts, where the receiver will try to catch the ball, and it'll hit him by like maybe going through his midsection and through his arms, and it brushes him, but he never possesses it. So when it comes to the kicking game that you will learn later, only the kicking team can recover a muffed ball. They are not allowed to advance a muffed ball. This is a rule that many coaches and many spectators do not understand. But remember, anyone can advance a fumble, but a muff is classified totally differently. So we must remember the differences between these 2 definitions. A player or other person is out of bounds when any part of the person is touching anything other than another player or a game official that is on or outside the sideline or end line. So if the official is standing on the sideline out of bounds and a player brushes up against him, that player is still in bounds. A ball in player possession is out of bounds when the runner of the ball touches anything, once again, other than another player or game official that is on or outside a sideline or in line. Now here's the difference. If a loose ball touches anything that is out of bounds, it is out of bounds. That includes a player or a game official. If that player or game official is out of bounds and that loose ball touches those individuals, that ball is now out of bounds. So make sure that you understand the difference between when a player is out of bounds, when a ball in player possession is out of bounds, and when a loose ball is out of bounds. Here are the types of fouls that can present themselves during a football game. We must understand these definitions, and as we go through these, you're going to see a lot in parentheses where it says other than non-player or unsportsmanlike. And we treat those fouls differently when it comes to enforcement than we do other fouls, and that you will discuss later. But the basic types of fouls that we have are dead ball fouls. And this is a foul which occurs at the time interval after a down has ended and before the ball is next snapped or free kicked. So this is the time after the play has ended up until the ball becomes live again by a legal snap or by a free kick. A double foul is one or more live ball fouls other than non-player or unsportsmanlike, which is committed by each team at such a time that the penalty is offset. An example of this would be a holding foul by an offensive lineman, and then defensive pass interference by the defender. Here you have a live ball foul on each team during the play. Those fouls will offset and we will replay the down. A live ball foul, if it's not a dead ball foul, it must be a live ball foul. So a live ball foul is just a foul which occurs during a down. And a down means while the play is in progress. A multiple foul is two or more live ball fouls other than non-player or unsportsmanlike committed during the same down by the same team at such a time that the offended team is permitted of choice of the penalty they want to select. So an example of this would be holding by the offense and also a block in the back by the offense. Here you have two fouls committed by the same team, so the defensive team now has their choice on which foul they would like to accept. Non-player or unsportsmanlike fouls. If you're not a player, and we have the definition of what makes a person a player or being a non-player, non-player and unsportsmanlike fouls, we always penalize them from the succeeding spot. And we're going to talk about the definition of the succeeding spot here in a few slides from now. But to be an unsportsmanlike foul, what you need to remember is this. Unsportsmanlike fouls are non-contact. Personal fouls are contact. Now this is a big difference, and we must know the difference between the two. An unsportsmanlike foul example would be swearing. It would be spiking the football. It would be making a gesture toward your opponent. Those are non-contact acts. The reason it's important to know the difference is if a player gets two unsportsmanlike conduct fouls in one game, they are disqualified. A player can receive multiple personal fouls during a contest. As long as those personal fouls are not deemed flagrant by the official, that player gets to remain in the game. So personal fouls are contact fouls, such as a late hit, such as a shove, or anything that's not related to football that you deem to be unnecessary. If contact is made, now we have a personal foul. So we must be able to understand the difference between the two. just some introduction to some spot definitions that you're going to hear discussed throughout the season. We have spots such as the basic spot, and this is just a point of reference for penalty enforcement. The enforcement spot is the point from which a penalty is enforced. The dead ball spot is the spot under the foremost point of the ball when it becomes dead by rule. We are always looking at the front point of the football when a play ends, because that is the dead ball spot and determines where the ball will next be put in play. If we have a penalty and the measurement leaves the ball in the side zone, and the side zone is the area between the hash mark and the sideline, we are not able to snap the football in that area of the football field, so we always make sure that we would take the ball into the hash for the ball to be next put in play. A snap is not allowed to occur in the side zone from the sideline to the hash mark. The snap has to occur either on a hash or be between the hash marks to begin a play. Some other spot definitions that we deal with is the previous spot. And the previous spot is just where the ball was last snapped or free kicked. This is where the ball was put in play from. That is the previous spot, and that is important to remember. The spot of the foul is where the foul occurs. Succeeding spot, the definition of succeeding spot, that is where the ball would next be snapped or free kicked from. So previous spot is where it was put in play from. Succeeding spot is where it will next be put in play from. So for example, after a touchback, the succeeding spot is the 20-yard line. In this section, we are going to go over some definitions of player designations. So a player is one of the 22 team members who is designated to start either half of the game and who subsequently replaces another player. To start a football game, you must start the game with 11. You cannot begin the game with less than 11 players. The rule does not allow it unless the teams have agreed previously to play, an example, an 8-on-8 contest. Now, a game can continue with fewer than 11 players due to injury or things like that, but the game for a standard football game must begin with 11 players. We're going to skip the definition of a back right now, and we're going to come back to it here shortly. So in Article 7, let's look at a holder. To be a holder is a player who controls the ball on the ground or on a kicking tee. Now the big word here that you must focus on is control. So if you take a play and you have a holder and the center snaps the ball back to him and he's trying to gain possession of that, but he never has possession of it, he never controls it, and the defenders come in and they hit him, we can have roughing the holder or running into the holder because the holder or the player never established himself as a holder because he never controlled the ball on the ground or on a kicking tee. This is a big deal for officials to know. We can't expect the average fan or even the coach to understand this, but that is what now makes that player a holder by definition. This is why the definitions are so very important. A kicker is a player who legally punts, drop kicks, or place kicks the ball. A player becomes a kicker when his knee, lower leg, or foot makes contact with the ball. He continues to be a kicker until he's had reasonable opportunity to regain his balance, or until after a free kick, such as a kickoff, he has advanced 5 yards beyond his free kick line, or the kick has touched the ground or any other player. So to call a running into or a roughing the kicker foul, the player has to establish himself as a kicker by legally kicking the football. We had a player one time that went back for a punt, and he went to drop the ball to punt it, and he totally missed the football with his leg. Well, the defenders come in and they really put a pretty hard hit on the player. And at the time, the referee threw his penalty flag and stepped out and signaled roughing the kicker. Well, one of the members on his crew came in and they said, you need to pick your flag up because we can't have roughing the kicker here. And the referee says, why not? He got hit really hard. And his crewmate said he never became a kicker because he never kicked the football. So this was a good crew save by his crew member. So that is why it is so very important to know the definitions of these players and what makes them a player. In Article 9, a lineman. We have a definition for an offensive lineman. We have a definition for a defensive lineman. A lineman is a player who is facing his opponent's goal line with the line of his shoulders approximately parallel and with his head or foot breaking an imaginary plane line drawn parallel to the line of scrimmage through the waist of the snapper when the ball is snapped. So what you need to take out of this definition is this. To be a lineman, the player's head or foot has to break an imaginary line drawn through the snapper's waist. That's as simple as I can make it for you. When you're on offense, you are either a lineman or you are a back by definition. And by back means you are in the backfield. So I have a diagram here and a couple slides illustrating this. But it's so very important to understand the definition of a lineman. So when it comes to calling if a formation is legal on offense or if it's illegal, we must be able to know the definition so we can apply the rule correctly. A passer is a player who throws a legal forward pass. This is important. So to call roughing the passer, if he throws the pass backward, this definition tells me that you cannot have roughing the passer because by definition he never established himself as a passer because the pass did not go forward. A snapper is a player who is facing his opponent's goal line with his shoulders approximately parallel, who snaps the ball. To be a legal snap, the snap has to be a quick, continuous movement, and it has to leave the snapper's hands immediately. It does not have to go between the snapper's leg to be a legal snap, but the snap must be one quick, continuous motion. If the player does not snap the ball in this manner, then he never established himself as a snapper by rule/definition. So you could not have roughing the snapper if he never established himself in that manner. As we talked about on the previous slide, one of the things that's very important for all officials is being able to recognize what is a legal formation by the offensive team to begin a play. We've already talked about the definition of a lineman, of an offensive lineman. The definition of a defensive lineman, for a defensive player to be on his line of scrimmage by rule, is if he is within 1 yard of the football when the snap occurs, he is now a defensive lineman. Now, he might be listed as a linebacker in the program that's being sold in the stands, But for our purposes, if the defender is within 1 yard of the football when the snap occurs, he is now a defensive lineman. And this has a lot of bearing when it comes to him being able to block below the waist legally on his opponent, or even him getting blocked below the waist legally by his opponent. So we must be able to recognize and understand. So you can see how the definitions and understanding the definitions is so important in applying the high school football rules correctly. So we must focus on them, and that is where your focus needs to stay at all times in your career, but especially early on in your career. Learn the definitions and you're going to do very well. We're going to go back a couple slides here and now talk about the definition of a back. We talked about the definition of an offensive lineman, where if a player's head or foot breaks the waistline of his teammate, who is the center, then he is an offensive lineman by rule. The definition of a back is any A player who has no part of his body breaking the plane of an imaginary line drawn parallel to the line of scrimmage through the waist of the nearest teammate who is legally on the line. Now notice, for the back, he cannot have any part of his body breaking an imaginary line through the waistline of his nearest teammate who is on the line of scrimmage. There's a difference here between this and breaking the waistline of the snapper. So we must be able to understand this difference. And the next slide is going to show this for you. On an offensive scrimmage play, a team is not allowed to have any more than 4 players in the backfield. Not allowed to have any more than 4 backfield players. On a regular scrimmage down, the offensive team must have at least 5 players numbered 50 through 79 on the offensive line of scrimmage. Now, there are always exceptions to some of these rules, but right now, just take away that for a normal offensive play, at least 5 offensive linemen must be on the line, numbered 50 through 79, and you can have no more than 4 backfield players on any given play. This is a slide that you will want to put in your library. This slide is a very good illustration on what makes a formation legal and what would make one illegal. So if we first look at the offensive lineman, notice that 88, 73, 60, 65, 77, 82, their head or foot breaks the waistline of the snapper, number 54. So by definition, they are all offensive linemen. Now number 36, who is a wideout, we have to ask ourselves, is he on the line of scrimmage or not? Does his head or foot break the waistline of the snapper? And the answer is yes, it does. So number 36 is also a lineman by rule. Now he is a wide receiver on this play and a wideout, but by rule, he is a lineman on the line of scrimmage. Let's look at number 16. Is number 16 a backfield player, or is he a lineman? Does number 16's head or foot break the waistline of the snapper? And the answer is no. Okay, so we know he's not a lineman. Now, does number 16's any part of his body break the waistline of his nearest teammate who is on the line of scrimmage? His nearest teammate is number 36. No part of his body breaks number 36's waistline, so he is a backfield player. This is important to know when it comes to pass eligibility on what he is able to do during the play. Now, sometimes you get players lined up like number 25, and what I call number 25 is a player who is in no man's land. You're not going to find the word no man's land in the rule book, but it is a player who is in limbo, meaning he is not an offensive lineman by rule because he does not break the waistline of the snapper. However, he's not a back by rule because part of his body is breaking the waistline of his nearest teammate, number 36, who is on the line. So he is neither a lineman nor a back. So he is in an illegal position. So just keep this slide in your library for future reference. This is a great slide to look at many times throughout the year and to illustrate it to coaches and to other players and other officials so we can be able to recognize legal formations correctly during the season. Here's a picture of a varsity scrimmage formation during a play. So we must be able to recognize if this formation is legal or not. So the first thing we really want to look at here is how many players are in the backfield, meaning how many do not break the waistline of the nearest teammate who is on the line of scrimmage. And I've illustrated this for you. So it shows me that there are 5 players who are in the backfield. The wideout at the top of the screen, he does not break the waistline of the snapper by head or foot, so he is not an offensive lineman. Nor does any part of his body break the waistline of his nearest teammate who is on the line. In this situation, it looks like that would be the left tackle. Now the wideout at the bottom of the screen is on the line of scrimmage, as his head or foot does break the waistline of the snapper. But by having 5 people in the backfield on this play, this makes this an illegal formation. And as you will learn, this is a live ball foul, a foul that becomes a foul when the ball is snapped. This becomes a foul when the ball is snapped because we're going to give the head coach time to realize that, hey, this formation is not right. I'm going to get penalized as soon as they snap the football. Give them a chance to call a timeout or give them a chance to make a shift to make this formation legal. So we must be able to recognize this formation here is an illegal formation. Now when you get your rule books, you're going to see that penalty enforcement is not introduced in the rule book until Rule 10. But we need to introduce you to the terminology that officials use when applying penalties. When it comes to penalty enforcement, football officials are interested in 2 things. That we have 2 types of plays that we actually deal with. One of those plays is called a loose ball play, and the other play is called a running play. Now, you may think you know what a loose ball play is, and a fan may think they know, but they really have no idea. So, we must learn what action makes up a loose ball play. First, let me tell you this. A loose ball play can only occur in or behind the neutral zone. Let me repeat that. A loose ball play can only occur in or behind the neutral zone when we're dealing with things such as a fumble. What makes up a loose ball play? A free kick or scrimmage kick. And we're just going to stop right there. So any action that occurs during a free kick or a scrimmage kick. And as you learn the kicking game later on, you're going to learn that a free kick begins when the ball is legally kicked, and the kick will end when possession is made by the receiving team, or the ball becomes dead another way by saying going out of bounds, going into the end zone on a kickoff, which would result in a touchback. So any action that would occur from the time that ball is legally kicked up until that kick ends by the receiver possessing the ball or the ball becoming dead by rule, by out of bounds, or another method. Any action during that time is all action during a loose ball play. The same thing with a punt, a scrimmage kick. From the time the ball is legally snapped through the kick until that kick ends, and a kick ends by possession by the receivers or becoming dead by rule on a punt, going out of bounds, being downed by the kicking team with no return. Any action during that time, and you have a foul during any part of that window while it's open, that is all part of loose ball play action. And we must know this. We must know the status of the ball and the type of play we have when we have a foul. Anytime you have a backward pass, an illegal kick, or a fumble made by the offensive team in or behind the neutral zone prior to a change of possession is all loose ball play action. So anytime you have a fumble behind the line of scrimmage by the offense and prior to change of possession, this is all loose ball play action. Any run or runs which precede such a legal or illegal kick, legal forward pass, backward pass, or fumble. So everything that leads up to one of these acts. So for example, the quarterback, the player takes a snap, he's rolling out to his right, he's looking downfield, and then he finally throws a legal forward pass. Everything that led up to him throwing that football legally, that is all part of a loose ball play. Once you learn what makes up a loose ball play, the rest of it's really easy. If it's not a loose ball play, everything else is a running play. So learn what makes up a loose ball play, and then everything else takes care of itself. Once again, we don't expect you to remember all of this. This is just introductions. So I always give this play scenario out to people that think they know the football rules. I'll say a player's running 30 yards downfield, he gets hit and he fumbles, and we have a foul while the ball is loose. Is that a running play or is that a loose ball play? And they will say, oh, that's a loose ball play because he fumbled the ball. And I'm going to say, no, you're incorrect. It's a running play. Why is that? The reason why is, remember, a loose ball play on a fumble can only occur in or behind the line of scrimmage. So once that player got beyond the line of scrimmage, even though he fumbled the ball and the ball was loose, that does not fit our loose ball play window criteria. So now it would constitute as a running play. So we must be able to know the difference of what makes up each type of play. To introduce basic penalty enforcement spots, we have already discussed the two types of plays that we deal with for penalty enforcement: loose ball play fouls and running plays. The basic spot for penalty enforcement for a loose ball play is the previous spot. We already know by definition the previous spot is where the football was snapped from, put in play from to begin the down. Running play fouls, the basic spot for a running play foul is the end of the run. We always penalize from the basic spot, except, once again, here's another exception that we have to the general rule. We as officials call this the all but one principle. It's the all but one time that we will not penalize from the basic spot. That is when the foul occurs behind the basic spot. Now, first make note that the all but one principle only applies to the offensive team. It does not apply to the defensive team. So, for example, we have a running play. We have a snap from the 30-yard line. It's 1st and 10 from the 30. And Team A has to reach the 40-yard line for a first down. The ball carrier runs the ball and he carries it out to the 42-yard line where he is tackled. During the run, A60 held on the 35-yard line, which is 7 yards behind the end of the run. This is a running play, so we have to ask ourselves 3 questions. What type of play did we have when we had the holding foul? Since we were beyond the line of scrimmage, we have a running play. The basic spot for a running play is the end of the run. Now, the end of the run is the 42. The foul occurred back on the 35. So this is an example where the foul occurred behind the basic spot. So in this example, we would penalize here from the spot of the foul. One way to kind of remember it is what's going to hurt the offensive team the most. Penalizing from the 42, which is the dead ball spot, or penalizing from the 35. Just remember that the all but one principle only applies to the offensive team. And this will become clearer to you as you actually see penalties applied in live action. This will make more sense to you. Once again, just an introduction to some of the terminology that we use in football officiating when it comes to penalty enforcement with loose ball plays, running plays, the all but one principle, spot of the foul, things of that nature. In the back of your rule book are football fundamentals, and these are just simple little statements that are great to live by when it comes to football officiating and things to remember. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to highlight on a few of them. But for example, a live ball is always in possession of a team. A live ball is in player possession or it's loose. A player cannot fumble before gaining possession. Remember, we talked about that with the definition of a fumble. You can't fumble the ball until you actually had possession of it. Now, you may have muffed it trying to gain possession of it, but you can't fumble it because you never had it to begin with. So, as we go through these are great things to look at, and we're going to go through a few more here as we continue in the module. In the fundamentals here, a down begins when the ball becomes live, and it ends when it becomes dead. That sounds very simple, and it is very simple. Let's look at number 4. The only defensive fouls which automatically cause a first down, an automatic first down, are your roughing fouls. You're roughing the kicker or the place kick holder. You're roughing the passer. You're roughing the snapper. Only your roughing fouls carry an automatic first down provision. Now this is a lot different than it is on what you see on Saturday or on Sunday watching college and the National Football League, where it seems like most defensive fouls always give the offensive team an automatic first down. That is not the case in high school. Just remember, only your roughing fouls are automatic. Now, the penalty distance may result in the first down after we apply the enforcement of the foul, but for it to be an automatic first down, only the roughing fouls are the ones that carry that provision. A game official's whistle seldom kills the ball. It is already dead by rule. You're going to learn this when you're doing your field work with your local association. But we do not want an official blowing his whistle unless he sees the ball dead in player possession or an incomplete pass hits the ground. The whistle is only an indicator that the ball is dead. Probably one of the worst things that can happen to a football official is have an inadvertent whistle. This means you blow the whistle when you shouldn't have, and when your whistle sounds, all action is stopped. So we want to be very careful with our whistle. You will be taught how to hold your whistle, how to blow your whistle, when to blow your whistle. These are all things that you will learn. The whistle to an official is a very important tool. It's a very valuable tool, but it can also be a tool that gets you into some trouble. So we have to be very careful on its usage. Number 2 is very important. No live ball foul causes the ball to become dead. So what this means is when you're officiating a play and you see a foul and you throw your penalty flag, just because you throw your flag, the action is going to continue. That foul does not cause the play to end if the play has already started. So those are just a couple things to remember. One of the fundamentals that you will need to focus on early on in your officiating career. There are kicking fundamentals that you will want to review once you have been introduced to the kicking game rule, which is in Rule 6. We did not touch on Rule 6 in this module. It may have been touched on some in the Ref Prep module. But the most important thing to remember is number 1 is a kick always ends as soon as any player secures possession. Officials have a little saying that says a kick is a kick is a kick is a kick. And that means that that status of that ball remains a kick until possession of it is gained. So you can have a lot of different receivers or even the kicking team players muff the football, touch it, trying to pick it up, trying to gain possession of it. But the kick actually never ends as long as the muffing is taking place. It only ends when possession by a player is made, or once again, the loose ball goes out of bounds or breaks the plane of the goal line, which would result in a touchback in a non-scoring attempt. As you learn about the kicking game on free kicks, such as kickoffs or kicks following a safety, the free kick lines are always 10 yards apart. Without move by penalty, the free kick line for the kicking team is the 40-yard line. The receivers must stay behind the 50-yard line. So the 50 is the receiver's free kick line. So the neutral zone on a free kick is that 10-yard belt between the 40 and the 50. It is important to understand when a kick ends, and we have highlighted on that, because the kicking team members cannot advance a kicked ball when it's still in the status of a kick. The only time that the kicking team can advance a kicked ball is when they gain possession of that football in or behind the neutral zone. The receiving team can advance a kicked ball anywhere in the field of play, but the kicking team members can only advance it on a scrimmage kick if they gain possession of it in or behind the line of scrimmage. A couple fundamentals involving the passing game to remember is a player who is eligible at the start of the down remains eligible throughout the down. So if you are an eligible pass receiver at the beginning of the down, nothing you can do during the down makes you ineligible. And to be an eligible pass receiver, you must meet a couple requirements. You must be either a backfield player, and we have discussed what the definition of a backfield player is now, or you must be on the ends of the line of scrimmage. And to also be eligible, you must be eligible by number. And your eligible numbers are 0 through 49 and 80 through 99. So to be eligible in high school football, it is by number and position. You are not allowed to report in as an eligible receiver. So they cannot bring in number 66 and say that he's going to be an eligible receiver. That is not possible in high school football. A handed ball is not a pass. The definition of a hand is transferring possession of the ball from one player to another without contact being lost. So it is always in connection with one player to the other. The ball is never out there by itself. It is always in contact with one of the players. So it's important to remember that a handed ball is not a pass. And it's also important to remember that forward pass interference can only occur beyond the neutral zone. And the neutral zone to start a play in high school football is the length of the football. That is your neutral zone. From tip to tip of that football is the neutral zone. For a regular scrimmage play, we've already discussed that on a free kick, the neutral zone is that 10-yard belt between the 40 and the 50, unless moved by penalty. Blocking by either team is permissible unless it's kick-catching interference, pass interference, a personal foul, or an illegal block. You are going to learn what makes up legal blocks and illegal blocks. We've already talked a little bit about blocking below the waist and blocking in the back and clipping. But when it talks about blocking, the difference between a legal block and what would be called holding, just remember this. Blocking is obstructing your opponent. Holding is restricting your opponent. So we have obstruction, which is legal. We have restriction, which is illegal. Just remember that as a general rule of thumb as you move forward in your officiating career. In the foul fundamental, the most important one to remember as you're starting out is number one, that no live ball foul causes the covering official to sound his whistle immediately. Remember, no foul that occurs during a live ball will cause the play to end. The basic fundamental for penalty enforcement is penalties are either 5, 10, or 15 yards, and the distance penalty for any foul may be declined. As you begin your field work, here are some of the concepts that you will be working on. You will need to learn how to throw the ball from official to official, and officials throw the football around the field underhanded. We never throw it overhanded. It looks better throwing it underhanded by making short, crisp passes. They will teach you how to blow a whistle properly and the different types of whistles that you have the options to purchase. You will need to work on body language. Remember, officiating is a lot about perception. So we want to look open, we want to look approachable, we want to look professional. So we do not want officials crossing their arms or having their hands on their hips. By crossing your arms, it makes you appear to be standoffish and not approachable. And by having your hands on your hips, the perception is it makes you look like you are bored. You're going to learn mechanics with the wing officials, and most new officials will start out working the linesman and line judge position. The linesman is the official on the sideline where the line to gain chain equipment is located, and that is opposite the press box. And the line judge is the sideline official who works on the press box side of the field. They're going to teach you how to count your players. Most officiating in football is what we call dead ball officiating. Most football games will last around 2.5 hours, but there is only actually 48 minutes of playing time in that 2.5 hour period. So most of an official's job is dead ball officiating. So we as officials, we must be good live ball officials, but we definitely must be good dead ball officials. And you're also going to be introduced on how to give the line of scrimmage to line players up, such as the wideouts, the widest player on the line. We've already talked about what constitutes a player being on his offensive line of scrimmage. We have made quite a few references in this module about your local association. As a registered official in the state of West Virginia, you will be required to join one of our 14 existing associations. And they are set up by area. So for example, if you are in the Weirton area, the board there is called the West Virginia Ohio Board. In the Wheeling area, it is the Ohio Valley Board. In the Parkersburg and surrounding area, it is the Ohio West Virginia Board. In the Point Pleasant area, it is the Ohio Kanawha Board. In the Charleston area, it is the Kanawha Southern Board. In the Huntington area, it is the River Cities Board. In the Logan area, it is the Tug Valley Board. And in the Beckley area, it is the New River Board. The other associations in West Virginia, in the Greenbrier Valley area is the Greenbrier Valley Board. In the Princeton area is the Mercer Board. In the Morgantown area is the Mason-Dixon Board. In the Martinsburg area is the Eastern Panhandle Board. In the Frankfort area is the Potomac Valley Board. And in the Oceana area is the Black Diamond Board. If you need help contacting any of the association leaders in these so-called associations, please feel free to reach out to the WVSSAC office, or you can contact me with the contact information provided to you earlier in the module. The WVSSAC wants to thank you for wanting to get involved in sports officiating. You will find this to be a very rewarding and something that you can do for a long time. Officiating does take time. It takes commitment from you. It takes commitment from your family and your home life to understand that you will be away from home some to call games. So not everybody can do this, but it is a great thing to be a part of and to be involved in. Remember that nobody is at the game to watch the officials, but also remember, we're the only non-biased people who are at the game site. Anything that we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. That is why we are here. That completes this module, and we realize that this is just a very, very small introduction to football officiating. The objective here was just to introduce you to some of the terms, definitions, philosophies that we as officials use, but the majority of your training will occur starting this day forward through your local association, through your game experiences, through your local board meetings that you have, through tests, through quizzes that you will take in the future. So once again, don't be overwhelmed. You are going to be overwhelmed, and that is expected. So just hang in there with us, and we will get you through this. In officiating, you have to give it a chance. It will get in your blood, and it's something that you will love to do. So I want to thank you again for taking time out to watch the modules that have been presented to you. And if you have any questions by reaching out to your local associations on contacts or anything through those organizations, please reach out to the SSAC office or to me personally. Thank you.